There was a huge protest as well, which was organised by Change for Tottenham, Change for Spurs. It was all about Levy out, Enoch out, which has been building a lot of kind of traction lately, and I guess rightly so. People are not happy with the way that the club is being run on the pitch. The 42% wage to revenue information, I think, kind of intensified it even more when you think about the type of players that have probably come through Spurs, even ones that we might know about that maybe other people don't know about, and have ended up at a Liverpool or a Chelsea or a United, etc., because of the wages. It's got to be so frustrating. And Dan, as someone that obviously covers Spurs week in, week out, and you have your own podcast and you are a Spurs fan, you obviously have an insight from all different angles and perspectives on this as to why there is so much, what's the word? Frustration, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally empathise, and there is a lot of frustration at the ownership at the moment. I think partly, and Anne just said this, it's not a secret, that's because of current results, the results over the last 2.5 months. I think if Spurs hadn't had the injury crisis and they carried on punching around sort of 5th to 7th, which I think is where they were after the City win in November, then I think there would still be simmering frustration, but it wouldn't be on the scale we saw on Sunday. But I think this is much bigger than just this season, right? I mean, we've had nearly a quarter of a century of Enix ownership, 1 trophy in that period. And there is a sense, I think, from Spurs fans that the ownership's decisions are the reason that the club doesn't fulfil its obvious potential. No one doubts they've done a huge amount of good for Tottenham. We see the stadium every single weekend, and it is magnificent. And on the commercial side, Spurs are flying, and they're kind of future-proofed and in a great spot in terms of the financial rules, etc. But the success on the pitch hasn't been there. And I think people look at Levy, fans look at Levy and say, he's got a brilliant vision for the business and commercial side of the club. He hasn't matched that with a vision for the football side of the club. And that is the issue. And that's the kind of gnawing frustration for supporters. So I think if Spurs pick up from here, the injured players come back, they go on a deep run in the Europa League and they put together a streak in the league, then some of that will die down, but not all of it. Until Spurs get to a place where they're kind of challenging for the biggest trophies every season and they're kind of fulfilling their potential as a big club, I think that frustration's not going to go away.
Yeah, this will hurt Daniel Levy. This will hurt the protest. Look, I dared to criticise Daniel Levy one time on talkSPORT when I was on here. I dared to criticise his tenure at the football club, and it worked against me. It was clipped up. The clip was clipped up at talkSPORT. I was due to do a sponsored event for Crystal Palace. Couple of Crystal Palace ex-players, couple of Spurs ex-players, do a little track, a little electric car around a racetrack and see who gets the best time. I obviously chose the wrong time to air my frustrations. I got a call the next day from the Palace press saying that representatives of Spurs have rung up and said unless I'm taken off the gig, they're not going to be turning up. I asked, was it anything to do with Daniel Levy? And they said, well, his name was mentioned. So look, I dared to criticise him. He got upset over it. That's why I say this is going to hurt him. Because, and I've always said it, and I said it in the clip that was clipped up, business, he is very good. He's a very astute businessman. The club is probably one of the most well-run clubs businessly in the world. On the pitch, it's not good enough. And that's what supporters want. That's what I want as a supporter. We both want these. We want trophies. I know new ownership's not going to guarantee trophies, but I sometimes compare this to a certain degree to the Newcastle situation when Mike Ashley was involved. And you want a club to be proud of. You want a club to, have ambition to win trophies. And as you said, the wage to revenue, 42%, lowest, one of the lowest in the Premier League, definitely the lowest in the perceived Big Six. It's not going to happen. Players are going to come and go because you're not giving enough to these players. So the ambition's not being shown. I think that is the frustration. And look, fair play, the turnout to the protest at the weekend was really good. There were thousands there. And will this work? I don't know. I think consistency, you might start to see it work, but I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah, I think, you just telling your story, there's so many instances. I've had my own instances with the club about being vocal and not happy with the ownership. And as a paying season ticket holder, I think I'm in my rights to say what
Agreed.
I want. So as long as I'm paying for my season ticket, as long as everyone else is paying for their season ticket and giving back to his £6 million bonus that he takes home every year, I mean, I think we're well within our rights to criticise, don't you?
Absolutely.
Look, I think the Change for Spurs protest was brilliant. I think that's the first time in years. I mean, I think this really kind of all started to spiral with the ENIC out more so after the sacking of Pochettino and how heavy-handed that was and trigger-happy it was. And I think that there was just so much maybe hurt with that situation from the fan base and just felt that it was just a real... just a bizarre move. It was like a Levy fetish thing that he had to go and get Jose because he couldn't get him the first time round, all those years ago. And it was like fulfilling his own little prophecy rather than actually thinking what was best for the club and allowing Pochettino the time to rebuild. And that's just kind of grown and grown and grown over the last 5.5, 6 years. I don't know whether this is smoke and mirrors because it seems like every time that we get to a place where there is big criticism on ENIC and Daniel Levy, there seems to be a rumour that starts going around, the Qataris are interested, this American consortium are interested. Qatar might be forced to pull out of PSG due to the legal challenges and criticism surrounding Al Khalifi. So how true, Dan, are these rumours of the Qataris being interested in Tottenham?
Well, I don't know about the Qataris pulling out of PSG, but I do know that, I believe that Levy met with Nasser Al Khalifi, he's the PSG president, about a year ago. So they have held talks in the past over a minority stake. There was interest there from Qatar. I believe that has since died down. But I don't know about this PSG stuff. But if they left PSG, that would potentially pave the way for them to come and invest in the Premier League. So I don't think we can completely rule that out. The Guardian had a story a few days ago about private investors from Qatar potentially looking to buy a minority stake in Spurs. So there have been lots of rumours swirling about a potential takeover. And Levy's on record saying he wants a minority partner. He said that. That's no secret that Spurs are looking there. And that part of the world, as we know, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, are investing a lot of money in sport, are investing a lot of money in football teams, and they're looking to the Premier League. And Abu Dhabi have Man City, Saudi Arabia have Newcastle, and so Qatar logically, will want to get their own Premier League side and start competing. I don't know kind of how true it is that they're kind of in talks with Spurs, but I think we certainly can't rule that out. And it feels like something that will plausibly happen in the not too distant future, whether that's at Spurs or another top flight club.
Yeah,
he doesn't do many interviews, Daniel Levy, and I was listening back to one that he has done previously, and he did say if there was a bid on the table that benefited the shareholders and first and foremost the football club, which was his words, they would really consider it. So look, everyone gets excited when these billionaires come and take an interest in your club because you look at potential football teams who could be playing for you. But there'll be a long way to go. The Spurs valued really high, and I think it's going to take one hell of a bid to get them looking.
I know that there was some interest just after the Champions League final, and I think Levy might have put the money side of things a little bit too high and scared them off. But they are currently valued at around 3.75 billion by Daniel Levy. I mean, one thing I will give him credit for, like we said, is the business aspect. When he took over, I think Spurs was valued at 80 million. So in terms of the product that he's built as a business, as like a kind of powerhouse, he's built that.
Yeah.
We just need a little bit of ambition on the pitch, don't we? Just a little bit.
I would say one thing, just on this subject area, that I think is massively in Levy's defence, is that if the Premier League had been kind of regulated in a different way, so i.e. if states and oligarchs hadn't been allowed to buy clubs, i.e. Abramovich hadn't been allowed to buy Chelsea or Abu Dhabi hadn't been allowed to buy Man City, how much more successful would Levy's approach, his kind of cautious, slow building approach have been? I think it would have been a lot more successful. They'd have had more top four finishes, they'd have had probably a trophy or two, maybe even a league title. So these big states that kind of and individuals that had basically unlimited wealth have massively changed the game. They've changed everything, and that's kind of the model that Spurs have been competing
you could also
against.
look at Liverpool and how they do business. You can actually look at Arsenal and how, I know in the last few years it's kind of stepped up a little bit more, but it's about doing it the right way. And there does come a point where you just need to just maybe open that wallet.
And it's adapting, because unfortunately these individuals and states have been allowed to come and take over clubs. And I don't think ENIC and Daniel Levy has adapted to that, because they're not poor. We've got a lot of money, but it's just, as we've seen with the graph that come out, there's not enough going into the football side of the business. And as an astute businessman that Daniel Levy is, it baffles me that he can't see a successful club, Champions League year in, year out, winning titles, builds revenue.
Exactly, so, that would benefit you so much
I think, more. It's great to run a club sensibly and always look after the bottom line. But then you need a sense sometimes for those opportunities when you do have to roll the dice and do have to take a risk. Every Spurs fan remembers the Louis Saha, Ryan Nelson transfer window.
We've never forgotten.
And obviously Pochettino's whole project was a great example of that. They were obviously well ahead of schedule. I know they were building the stadium, but there was a point there where they had to make some risky sales and then reinvest the money, refresh the squad, and Levy didn't seem to have the sense for those moments when it's time to act differently.
Yeah, it's a lot of reactiveness rather than being proactive.
Yeah, it's fine to be cautious and look after the bottom line, 85% of the time, but then sometimes you have to sense your chance, and he's never seemed to do that, I think, and that's frustrating.
Absolutely.